When Jessa Duggar first began dating Ben Seawald, the Duggar family approached their budding relationship with a sense of caution. Raised in a tightly knit, deeply religious household, the Duggars had always placed great emphasis on courtship and marriage within their own cultural and spiritual framework. As one of the eldest daughters, Jessa was expected to follow the same traditional guidelines that had governed her siblings' relationships, guidelines that included parental involvement, strict boundaries, and a strong commitment to shared values. Given this background, any deviation from these expectations naturally raised concerns among the family. Ben, being from outside the Duggar circle, was initially viewed with skepticism. His background, lifestyle, and even his mannerisms were scrutinized under the weight of the family's high standards. Unlike many of Jessa's previous suitors, who came from similar conservative Christian upbringings, Ben represented an unfamiliar path, one that did not align entirely with the traditions the Duggars had long upheld. This divergence prompted questions about whether he truly understood or respected the values central to Jessa's upbringing. Some family members voiced quiet apprehensions, wondering if Ben would be able to fully commit to the expectations set forth by both his new bride and her parents. Despite these reservations, Jessa remained steadfast in her belief that Ben was the right person for her. Their relationship continued to develop, though not without the careful watch of her parents, particularly Jim Bob and Michelle Duggar, who had always played an active role in their children's romantic lives. While they supported Jessa's decision, they also made it clear that Ben would need to prove himself worthy of their trust and acceptance. This cautious stance reflected the broader Duggar philosophy. Love and marriage were sacred commitments, and ensuring compatibility extended beyond just the couple involved. It required alignment with the entire family. One of the primary sources of concern for the Duggar family stemmed from the stark differences between Ben Seawald's background and the deeply ingrained values of the Duggar household. The Duggars had built their identity around a strict interpretation of Christianity, emphasizing modesty, obedience, and a firm commitment to traditional gender roles. Every aspect of their lives, from parenting methods to courtship practices, was dictated by these principles, making them highly selective when it came to outsiders entering their world. Ben, however, came from a different cultural and spiritual landscape. Raised in a more mainstream Christian environment, he lacked the same level of exposure to the specific doctrines and customs that shaped the Duggar way of life. This divergence in religious upbringing immediately set him apart from the expectations the family had for a potential son-in-law. Beyond religious differences, Ben's personal habits and lifestyle choices also contributed to the family's initial skepticism. Unlike many of Jessa's past suitors, who adhered to the Duggars' stringent standards of dress and behavior, Ben presented a more casual demeanor. His appearance, including his tattoos and relaxed attitude towards certain social norms, contrasted sharply with the image of a proper spouse as envisioned by the Duggars. These visible distinctions fueled concerns that Ben might not fully embrace the family's values or understand the gravity of the commitments required in marrying into such a prominent and devout household. Additionally, his career aspirations and life goals diverged from the traditional paths typically followed by Duggar men, further deepening the family's uncertainty about his suitability. The Duggars' hesitation was not solely rooted in personal judgment, but rather in a genuine fear that Ben's differing worldview could create friction within the family dynamic. Having maintained a tight-knit unit where every member operated under the same guiding principles, the prospect of integrating someone with contrasting beliefs raised questions about how well he would adapt. Would he respect the authority of Jim Bob and Michelle? Would he uphold the same moral standards expected of a Duggar son-in-law? These uncertainties, while not necessarily outright rejections, underscored the family's cautious approach to accepting Ben as part of their fold. From the outset, Ben Seawald's interactions with the Duggar family were marked by a mix of curiosity, politeness, and underlying tension. As he spent more time with Jessa and gradually became a presence in the Duggar household, his personality and communication style stood out in ways that both intrigued and unsettled some family members. Ben, known for his easygoing nature and dry sense of humor, often approached conversations with a lightheartedness that contrasted with the more formal and reserved demeanor typical of the Duggars. While Jessa found his wit endearing, others in the family interpreted it as lacking the seriousness expected in their tightly controlled social dynamics. His body language and tone during discussions sometimes clashed with the family's expectations of respectful interaction. Unlike the structured, deferential way Jessa and her siblings addressed their parents, Ben occasionally spoke in a more casual, direct manner that some perceived as bordering on disrespect. Though unintentional, these moments reinforced the notion that he had not been raised within the same rigid framework of etiquette and reverence for authority that defined the Duggar household. Jim, Bob, and Michelle, ever watchful, took note of these nuances, weighing them against their expectations for how a future son-in-law should conduct himself. Despite these early missteps, there were instances where Ben demonstrated genuine effort to connect with the family. He engaged in conversations about faith, albeit from a different perspective, and showed interest in understanding the Duggars' way of life. However, his attempts were sometimes met with polite but guarded responses, as the family remained hesitant to fully embrace him. For the Duggars, acceptance was not merely about likability, it was about compatibility with their deeply held convictions, a standard Ben had yet to fully meet. As Ben's relationship with Jessa progressed, the Duggar family's concerns about his ability to fully embrace their values only intensified. One of the most pressing issues revolved around his willingness to adhere to the strict religious and moral standards that governed the Duggar household. The family had long emphasized a lifestyle centered on purity, obedience, and unwavering devotion to faith, all of which were non-negotiable in their view of a proper marriage. Ben, however, had not been raised with the same level of spiritual discipline, and his more relaxed approach to certain aspects of faith caused unease among the Duggars. They questioned whether he truly understood the depth of commitment required not just to Jessa, but to the entire family's way of life. This concern was particularly evident in how Ben handled key moments that the Duggars saw as essential markers of spiritual maturity. During discussions about premarital intimacy, for example, Ben's views appeared less rigid than those of previous suitors, prompting worries that he might not uphold the same purity standards expected of a Duggar son-in-law. Additionally, his approach to accountability and confession, an integral part of the Duggar courtship process, differed significantly from what Jessa's parents considered necessary for maintaining transparency and integrity in a relationship. These differences led Jim, Bob, and Michelle to express their reservations directly, urging Ben to demonstrate a deeper commitment to their ideals if he wished to be fully accepted into the family. Ultimately, the Duggars believed that marriage was not just a union between two individuals, but a binding connection between families with shared values. Ben's perceived reluctance or inability to fully adopt these expectations left lingering doubts about his readiness for such a significant step. While Jessa remained confident in her choice, her parents made it clear that Ben would need to prove himself through actions, not just words, before they could fully support the marriage. Over time, the Duggar family's perception of Ben Seewald began to shift as they observed his growing commitment to Jessa and his efforts to integrate into their world. What initially seemed like insurmountable differences slowly gave way to small but meaningful gestures that demonstrated Ben's willingness to adapt. He started attending church services more regularly, showing a genuine interest in the family's spiritual practices. Though his expressions of faith differed from theirs, his consistent presence and participation signaled a level of respect and effort that did not go unnoticed. Jessa played a pivotal role in bridging the gap between Ben and her family. She acted as a mediator, explaining Ben's intentions and reassuring her parents that his heart was in the right place. Her unwavering belief in their relationship helped soften some of the family's initial resistance. Additionally, Ben began to engage more thoughtfully in conversations about their shared values, acknowledging areas where he needed to grow and expressing a willingness to learn. These efforts, though gradual, began to chip away at the skepticism that had surrounded him. Key moments also helped solidify the family's acceptance. When Ben publicly reaffirmed his commitment to Jessa and their shared future, standing firm in his decision despite external scrutiny, it demonstrated a level of maturity and resolve that resonated with the Duggars. Over time, what once felt like an outsider trying to fit in evolved into a more natural integration, allowing the family to see Ben not just as Jessa's husband, but as someone who, while different, was genuinely dedicated to supporting their daughter and respecting their values.